Good morning, everyone. My name is Sunil Pai. I want to first take a moment to thank the organizers of the conference. I want to thank Chirpo for inviting us. This is my first time in Italy, and I've been eating so much. It's been just absolutely wonderful, like 12 types of pasta. It's been all great. It's been all great. Um, I'm here to talk to you about real-time collaborative computing. First, a little bit about myself. As Jane mentioned, I worked in a bunch of places. I've spent the last 5 years in London, and I worked in Oculus, where I helped build virtual reality multiplayer apps. So writing React for virtual reality is easily the most sci-fi job I've had in my life. I miss it a lot. I spent a year on the React team, which is not as sci-fi, but it was still cool. I worked for a bank. I don't talk about that anymore. I worked in Cloudflare. I decided I wanted to move a little bit away from front-end development and see like what the backend was about, and I truly learned about the promise of edge computing. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about that today. The thesis is that in the future, all applications on the internet will be multiplayer first. What that means is that we collaborate on software from our own machines. Of course, the pandemic accelerated this. Everybody works remotely from home. Even if you're in the same city, you'll be working from your couch or a co-working space, and you'll ping someone and say, hey, can you just jump on a quick call with me? GitHub is a form of collaboration. But the interesting one for me is real-time collaborative multiplayer. Multiple people on the same thing, your Google Docs, your Figma, or hell, like AAA game studios. But don't you think it's a little strange that there aren't more of these applications out there right now? And the truth is that WebSockets themselves, they were launched in 2009. The spec was in 2008. It turns out that the infrastructure for actually deploying these things has always been very hard to do and very expensive. Anyway, so we'll talk about the problem. Let's start by building. As I mentioned, there are various types of collaboration. Whiteboarding apps are getting quite popular. People will use live share to share the games. There is usually some form of artifact, a drawing, a project, everyone working on the same linear board, a spreadsheet, some kind of project that we use at work or at play, or even a song. I hope to see a lot more collaborative music making apps in the future. So let's start from first principles. Let's start building a multiplayer app. I was trying to wonder what a suitably complex and complicated example for this prestigious audience would be. And Tejas gave us the answer. We are going to build a shared counter. Right? And we're going to do it in the simplest way possible. Okay? So I'm using Cloudflare workers for this, but the concepts are similar enough whether you're using Vercel, AWS, Node, what have you, even if it's like PHP, we'll see. So we have a little variable called count, and it starts with 0. Nice local state, not talking to a database or anything. And we'll have a form, and anytime that form is posted, we'll just update the count. Fairly simple. By the way, I don't know if you're aware of this wonderful programming language called HTML. I only discovered it recently. It looks like JSX, but there's some funky internal, the standard library is very cool. There's something called a form. I think it stands for formation or, anyway, so you make a little form, okay? And it has inside it, it has a little button that will do the submission for the form that we saw, and it'll spit the value back out. But this doesn't feel suitably real time. So any idea what technology we can use to make this real time? Any ideas? What do you think? WebSockets, anything else? Long polling, etc. I decided to go way more advanced than all you plebs. I'm going to use a set interval and refresh it every 2 seconds. That's real time enough for us. We stitch all that together. We make a little request handler that looks at the method and spits out the cool advanced HTML into the page, right? Nice. And we deploy it, and I used a design system that comes inbuilt with the browser. the accounting app, and you click increment, and as you notice, the form submits, and it shows the value. You open up another tab, and as you can see, every couple of seconds, it takes a little while to catch up. So one is Safari, one is Edge. I'm using Edge by this very small company in Seattle called Microsoft. They're doing some exciting work. So yeah, there we go. We have a real-time updating counter app that you can share with your friends, right? So you take this and you push it to the internet. You use rank deploy or Vercel deploy, or one of these things, and you push it to the internet. And you share a tweet, I assume. That's how you talk to your friends right now. And you say, hey, here's a link, everybody get on it. And you start noticing a problem immediately. So one of your friends is clicking on it and sees the number updating. But then another friend sees it, but doesn't see the clicks that the first one is updating. They're just seeing it updating separately for themselves, no matter if they leave it for a couple of seconds or not. Then you share it with a couple. I'm sure everybody has that one annoying couple friend. They go together everywhere. You're never talking to just one of them. It's always just the two of them as a group. So they're together, and they're looking at the same device, and they have the same problem, which is they're not seeing these updates that the other people are clicking. There are these 5 friends who have gone out for dinner without inviting you, and they're trying it as well. This happens all the time, it is what it is. And they're seeing the same problem. None of these values are actually updating. But why is that so? We had a little variable, and we had a number, and it should update it. The thing is that our mental model of local development versus how we deploy onto the internet now has like rapidly changed. You don't deploy to a single server anymore, do you? The mental model we had is that all these people are connecting and seeing the same state, that little variable. But the truth is that each of these users, each of these groups is connecting to a data center or a server relatively close to them. And those are separate nodes. Those are different JavaScript processes that are running either on the edge or multiple data centers. One of them is connecting to US West 2. One of them is connecting to Amazon East 1. The 4 European friends that, 400 friends that you have are connecting to a data center in Europe. And that's annoying. That's not a good state to be. And this exacerbates itself the more people in the planet who start connecting to your server, right? And you tell yourself, okay, fine, you know what I'll do? I'll actually use a database instead. Instead of storing it as local state, I'm going to deploy a database at one point. But we end up with the same problem. You don't want thousands of people hitting like a database machine somewhere. So you end up building like replicas across the planet, like setting up a database in every country, a couple more in highly populated cities, what have you. And you do the same thing with compute, right? Like we already had this problem, like it's not really connecting to one server. I use Red here because if you're using something like WebSockets, you need a message passing system built on top of Redis or some key value store like that. But the same problem happens. You don't really want to overwhelm that one machine, so you end up deploying all of these across the planet. And now all these databases, simply because they need to synchronize the value that a particular group is speaking to, you need some, well, you can't really connect how these users connect to everyone. And you end up with this thing where every user is connecting, let's say, to one machine and one database somewhere. Some are connecting to multiple. You end up having to build a replication system across all your key value stores. So if you have like multiple rooms, like multiple numbers that everyone wants to connect to, you need a way to like synchronize these values. And like I said, the databases as well have to synchronize their tables so that everyone is seeing the same thing at the same time. At this point, this little counting app that you wanted to build and ship to your friends has become a multiple-week project. You're now spending thousands of dollars on infrastructure, and that everyone is still kind of mad at you because they're not really seeing the same value. Like, what is the point of building an application like this, right? This is, to reiterate my point, it is not a mistake that it takes a multi-billion-dollar company like a Google or a Figma or a AAA game studio to build collaborative real-time apps, simply because you're not going to build this out in a weekend. So what can we do about it? It strikes me that there's a separation of concerns problem here, right? As an application developer, we don't want to have to focus on the infrastructure side of things. We don't want to have to deal with the networking layer, the way that connections are routed to different machines, the way processes are managed on a single machine that can spin up and down based on demand that comes into these machines. What I want to do is argue about whether I'm using GraphQL or Redux. I want to get into an argument about which CSS styling solution I'm using. Those are important things to me, okay? I built a CSS and JS library. Do you know how many arguments I got into online? Like, it was a lot. Every day, wake up, and I'm like, no, it's background color red. These are important conversations to have. I'm a front-end developer. I like to think of myself as important. So there is a separation. This is a separation of concerns problem. I don't want to deal with this. This is the things that platforms were supposed to solve for us. So I started looking at the problem again. Cloudflare is, I worked there for a year. I built out their CLI. So there's clearly no bias on my side. But you can imagine that. You can imagine using another platform for this. But Cloudflare I really like because they're truly doing this thing where they're covering the entire planet with compute. It's not just deployed in about 275 cities. That's their last official number. I assume it'll go up. But in 10,000 points of presence. Not only, they don't really have like data centers. They take their hardware and install software directly at the ISP level in the telecommunications point. So that's why a lot of people use Cloudflare for their CDN, right? Like the moment you try to connect a site, it's probably within, well, in Verona, I assume it's within about like 10, 15 milliseconds of here somewhere. But it does exacerbate the problem that we had of state. If you have a look at this graph again, we can split it into two things. And like I mentioned, the things that Cloudflare and other platforms are good at is handling these bits, figuring out the networking, the routing, the synchronizing of connections and state and compute across the planet. In September 2020, they invented something new. That's when I actually got interested in them, and I hated working in the bank, so I wanted to quit. It's called durable objects. Again, such a weird name for a wonderful piece of technology. The basic premise of durable objects is that given an ID, so something that represents a document, a drawing, a game, whatever, Cloudflare will make sure that every connection to that ends up in a single process. In fact, not only does it guarantee that, it'll try to make sure that it's closest to whoever is connecting to it. And we will see a demo of how that works. It takes this model, but instead provides you this model. It takes a single ID and it makes sure everybody connects to it. Remember, this is kind of what we wanted. You don't have to worry about synchronizing stuff. It will connect to the same process. Of course, there are some trade-offs with this, as you can imagine. Like these isolates, that's what these processes are called. It's about 128 MB RAM, which is not a lot of machine. Like I have like gigabytes that I use to run multiple Chromium-based applications on my laptop. But which is fine. It turns out the trade-offs are that it can't do more than like 30, 40 people who connect to a document. And it's a great trade-off to have, because if you have more than 30, 40 people in a Google Doc editing something, you have a bigger problem. It's fine. It's a thing we can live with. And the nice thing is that it scales across the planet. For different IDs, different documents, it creates little synchronization points closest to those groups. And you get the model back. I took that, and I've built something called PartyKit. PartyKit is a platform built on top of durable objects and a bunch of other things that takes the use case of real-time collaborative multiplayer apps and provides you a toolchain for doing these things. It gives you the developer tooling. And I'll show you that. When I say developer tooling, I mean very much a CLI that you can run on your machine. It takes a code. You can do a little local development. It gives you libraries, integrations with popular libraries like YJS, et cetera, which we just learned about in Yanni's talk. And it gives you a deployment platform. It's a thin layer on top of Cloudflare right now, might use other providers in the future, that you can push to the edge within like a few seconds once you're happy with your code. The way the code is written is also quite nice. I'm quite happy about this. You saw fetch, but I call it on request because an event handler that a front-end developer would prefer. There's a little abstraction for a room. It holds all the connections to the room, and you can respond to it with regular web standard responses. It also supports WebSockets, and again, we'll see a demo of how that works right now. And it's nice because instead of having to build a message passing system across all these different machines, you're like, no, like If I want to broadcast to every user who's connected to the room, I can write a for loop, say, for connection in room.connection, send a message to all of them. The thing I like best about PartyKit is, unlike other third-party services, you get to bring your own code. You can use YJS, which is such a great choice for building resilient applications for where multiple people are editing something at the same time. There's also a new player called AutoMerge by the folks at Ink and Switch, such a great team. I highly recommend looking into their research work, great group. If you're a state machine junkie, you can use the library from the folks at Stately by David K. Piano and group. You can use Redux. You can use a regular JavaScript object. Like I said, you can say let count equals 0, like based on your trade-offs. You don't. PartyKit is not opinionated about how you build your application and what CSS you choose. We just take care of the routing and the hard problem of the synchronizing stuff. For example, a fully production-ready YJS backend takes about 10 lines of code right now. This is all it takes. I have a library called YPartyKit, which helps you build YJS backends. And you say, anytime a connection comes into the room, just connect that WebSocket to this. Use a YJS document for it. I'm using some newer TypeScript syntax, satisfies. It's pretty good. And you can take this, and there are 2 main commands. There's a bunch of other stuff, but you can say, hey, partykit dev server.ts, the file that you just wrote. You will run this alongside your existing app, which is already on Vercel or Netlify or AWS, Fly.io. It doesn't matter. Like, you use your stack that is good for those workloads, for those things, but you run this little thing that handles your multiplayer syncing stuff. And once you're done with it, you say partykit deploy. It takes about 5 to 10 seconds, depending on your internet connection. It'll do a full build. We support TypeScript, WASM. You don't have to worry about all of that stuff. You can, of course, configure it with a tsconfig, but we compile it all the same. You don't need to run any custom builds. And it pushes it out onto the edge. There are a number of other features that I like that PartyKit provides, and I'll go through them, actually. Previews, so if any of you have used Vercel or Netlify, you know that thing where you put up a GitHub PR and it makes a little staging deploy with a unique URL, so you can test all your stuff before you even land it into the repository. Well, PartyKit supports that as well. Like, it, instead of pushing everything to production and instead of only testing locally on your machine, per PR, per GitHub PR, you can test it in a staging environment with your own private data, make sure it's fine, and then deploy out onto the edge. We have support for environment variables and secrets, so if you're connecting to a third-party database and it has a key, you can use this as a secret store. We have live logs. This is super important to me. So once you deploy your code out to all these hundreds and thousands of machines, you want a way to be able to see what's happening on these machines. So you can just say partykit tail, and it takes all the console log statements and all the requests that are happening, concatenates it into one stream and streams it into your terminal. Super useful when things are going wrong, like one of my demos, which just broke a few minutes before the thing. It's cross-platform. My demos are web, but you can use it from any platform, really. It doesn't even have to be, the clients don't even have to be JavaScript. You should be able to write a Swift connector for this, a Java connector. It'll work on phones and AR, VR, or any new runtime. Like, it's just using web standard sockets. There are integrations, so templates for working with Vercel and Netlify. Like I said, simply because it's such a small, pliable thing, it fits well with other things. Further, you can use it with React or Vue or Solid. It's nice leaning on standards for things like this, where I'm like, yeah, your browser or runtime already supports these things. Just go ahead and use it. Importantly, PartyKit also comes with support for our in-house analytics and any extra analytics you want to use. So when you're building an application like this, you want to implement stuff like rate limiting, or say, oh, a game can last only for 10 minutes. Make sure you shut it down. So based on messages and measurements that you can take for, you can apply your own logic. And you can add your own analytics into it. Maybe you want to pass on the cost of PartyKit to your users. Like, you want to build your own real-time platform on top of PartyKit, and you want to be able to bill your users based on particular usage. Well, PartyKit supports that really well. So it's a full-fledged developer platform for building real-time collaborative applications, which is a big way of saying, like, I built a thing that multiple people can update their counters on. So a quick demo. This is a demo built with the folks at TLDraw. TLDraw is a live collaborative drawing app. And that's a great app in itself, TLDraw, but we figured we'd build one that was a little more social and didn't have any form of permanence. So if you'd like to, you can actually jump into this QR code right now, and I will as well. Don't be rude. I mean, it's not my fault if you do so. We haven't figured out any form of... oh, sorry. Go ahead. You want to get into it? All right. I assume a bunch of you are getting into it. Let's actually load it up ourselves here and see what you all are doing. This tops off at about like 40, 50 people, so I might not even connect. Yeah. I suppose you all are wonderful. Thanks a lot. I needed that. I needed my demo to be. I assume all of you are, well, hands up if you're actually connected and doing a bunch of drawing. Okay, thank you for straining my entire application. Okay, disconnect for a bit so that it actually loads here, like gives it a chance to load. Oh, there it is. Hey. It's nice. This is live. There's no login or anything. Feel free to jump into it. What's nice is that it keeps scrolling upwards. So if you drop anything profane, like it hopefully goes up. There's a nice little social moderation angle as well. People who see rude things being drawn usually end up going on top of it and scrubbing over it. But to be clear, this team that built this was about like 4 people. And the backend code that they used is, in fact, exactly this code. This is the entire backend multiplayer code that powers that application. It just works. I have to figure out a way to fit a room of 200, 300 people into it. I'll get to it. I'll figure that out. So that was my demo. I have another demo, which is not working on iPhones right now. How many here are not using iPhones? Amazing. Okay, so for the iPhone people, they've always thought of themselves as better than the rest of us. And in this scenario, I have an iPhone, but I won't be joining anyway. So we're going to try it. Okay, fine. Okay, we're going to try this, okay? It might suck. We're about to find out. This is a new demo that I built just for this conference. It's based on a thing that a musician named Jacob Collier does. He's one of my favorite musicians. He's a virtuoso, just a wonderfully talented person, where during part of his show, he stops playing every instrument, and he guides the entire audience along in a chorus, and they can do chords, and the thing is that it turns out musical notes are part of the human psyche itself. Like the pentatonic scale is something that's in our brains, and we can understand it. So we're going to do a way shittier version of that right now, okay? So I'm going to put another QR code on screen. First thing you want to do is remove your phones from silent mode, okay? Make sure it's on full volume. It has to sound really bad. That's what we're going to go for. Okay, are you ready? You want to see the QR code to jump into it? And we will see a visualization of all of you getting into it. Okay, so here, everybody get into this. Let's make this a little bigger. Maybe we can do that. All right. I hope sorry for the iPhone folks. So I assume everyone's seeing a little start button. Yeah. Okay, so hit that start button, and you'll see a number of keys with the color of my shoes. Yeah. Right. Let me refresh. I assume this is also not connecting right now. Oh, okay. So I see some people starting to connect. Okay, so everyone hit the lowest note, the bottommost note. See, one person connecting. It should be more than that. Oh, okay. So we're seeing everyone like slowly connecting to this. It's probably breaking at this point. So everyone's hitting the lowest note, right? Okay, now everyone hit like the third note. This is not as loud as I wanted, but let's see. Okay. You keep hitting the lowest note, okay, the lowest one, the C down there. You folks hit the third note, like the third one from the bottom, okay? And you folks hit the fifth note. Let's see if we can say this. Ladies and gentlemen, we have done a C major. It's cool. Uh, so clearly the demo is still broken. This should have been a little live thing. And like I said, it taps out at about like 30, 40 people, and we're kind of breaking it. But hey, like that's kind of colorful. And when I tell the story to other people, I'll tell them that it was all your fault. Anyway, how am I for time, by the way? How am I for time? Oh, I have, okay, that's not too bad. Anyway, so that's how you build real-time collaborative apps. It's taken, I think PartyKit takes something that has been traditionally very hard, very expensive, very time-consuming, operationally heavy. You have to like hire a bunch of engineers to make sure your servers are standing up. Takes the power of edge computing and makes that, is someone still hitting the C note, by the way? No, I think. It takes that and it makes it, I think, a lot simpler. Well, what it is, it takes it out of your hands. Things will get better. It's a young project. I'll figure out how to scale it for more people. I have some ideas. I have some plans for this. I'm at a place now where the developer toolchain works. But I built it because this is the platform I want to build apps in the future. Some features that I plan on launching is later this year, we'll have support for audio and video as well. So if you want to build your own Zoom, little in-house Zoom, a little app that you use with your family, you should be able to do that. We might have a proper database. Right now, there's a little key value store, which is pretty, and it distributes itself across the planet. But some people want to write SQL queries and indexes and stuff like that. We'll probably have that by the end of the year. When I started building this, I started building it as a collaboration engine for humans. But speaking with folks like Jan, I think my ambition is growing a little bigger, where it takes this model and it adds and AIs into it. And I think we are on the cusp. It's been such a mad 6 months in the technology space where everything has been rethought. And I would love to see myself and other people see if we can move away from a chat style of building applications, ask stuff and get responses back, and truly start working with machines as collaborators on the things that matter to us. Thanks very much for your time. I appreciate this. This was great. You can find me on Twitter. I live half my life on that completely cursed website. I hate it so much, but I'm there. You can also follow PartyKit on Twitter at partykit_io. I have a website for PartyKit where you can do a quick sign up, and I've started onboarding people who want to try it out. You can also sponsor me on GitHub sponsors from there. Yeah, again, thanks so much for the opportunity. This was great. At least one demo went kind of well, so I'll take that. It was good.
Thanks. That was great. I've dabbled a little bit in WebRTC and stuff like that, so I know how painful it can be sometimes. Yeah, yeah. So before I go to the other, I have one question. So what was the reason why the second demo only worked on Android?
Because I wrote some code this morning being too ambitious about it and broke the demo.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
I hate Safari as a developer. Honestly, the multiplayer part was so easy, 10 lines of code, but trying to get touch working on the iPhone. Oh, you can't hear it? Oh, trying to get touch working on the iPhone was a pain in the ass, and it was not fun. So that's why it doesn't work on Apple phones today. I'll try to fix it later.
Are there any questions in the audience?
Thank you for the great talk. A quick question, are you planning to monetize this, maybe with some kind of platform offering, or is it just going to be an open source project forever?
No, so I plan, well, I'm not really doing a pitch to sell the product here, but yes, I will figure out a way to have a billing page where you pay me for access to the Cloudflare platform underneath. I mean, I pay for that, so hey, like some multiple of that. Venture firms, if you're hearing this right now, feel free to reach out. I would love to burn your money. Yes, but I assume it'll be, it's like pennies on the dollar. You will be spending way more time and money on your choice of CSS, I assume. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks again. I had a great time. Appreciate it.